You are not here by accident. Something deeper than chance has led you to this exact moment, to this very story. Perhaps you've felt it already, that subtle pull beneath the chaos of your daily life, the quiet restlessness that makes you wonder if there's something more. The ancients would have called it fate. The mystics would have called it divine timing, and today we call it intuition. Whatever the name, the truth remains the same. You were meant to hear this now. Lately, maybe you've felt overwhelmed, as if life itself has slipped into disorder. Routines break down, relationships shift, certainty dissolves. It feels senseless, like a storm without warning. Yet history teaches us that such storms have always been the birthplace of transformation. The myth of the phoenix reminds us that fire comes before flight, that ashes are not endings, but beginnings. The medieval mystics spoke of the dark night of the soul, a period of despair and confusion that is, in fact, the threshold of spiritual awakening. What you're living through may not be chaos at all. It may be the clearest sign that you are about to step into the most powerful chapter of your life. The tragedy is not that the universe fails to send signs. It always does. The tragedy is that most people never recognize them. They misinterpret challenges as punishment, setbacks as failure, confusion as weakness, and they give up, sometimes just before the breakthrough. But not you. The fact that you are still listening, still curious, still willing to question, this alone means you are paying attention. And paying attention is the first act of transformation. The universe rarely shouts. It whispers first. It nudges. It tests your attention. A book falls into your hands by accident, yet its words feel written for you. A stranger's comment lingers in your mind longer than it should. A sudden disruption, losing a job, ending a relationship, moving away, at first feels like destruction, but upon reflection feels like a door being quietly opened. The ancients saw these moments not as coincidence, but as omens. In the Roman world, augurs studied the flight of birds to divine destiny. In China, the I Ching was cast to interpret change itself. Across cultures, one truth repeats: the universe signals before it transforms. Today, I will walk you through 7 of the most powerful signs that you are on the edge of profound transformation. And if even 3 of them resonate with your current life, you must prepare yourself, because something extraordinary is already unfolding within you. The first sign begins here. You start questioning everything you thought you knew. Your beliefs, your values, even the identity you've carried for years suddenly feel fragile. Philosophers from every age recognize this moment. Socrates called it wisdom, the recognition that you know nothing. The Buddha abandoned his palace when the old answers could no longer sustain him. Questioning is not collapse. It is the first crack through which light enters. This questioning feels uncomfortable, almost dangerous, as if the ground beneath you is breaking apart. But that discomfort is sacred. It is life's way of showing you that the old structures have reached their limits, and something greater is calling. When you find yourself reflecting on your reality, your relationships, your direction in life, understand this: you are not breaking down. You are breaking free. And here is the paradox. The moment you begin to feel most uncertain may actually be the moment you are closest to truth. Like travelers standing before an unmarked path, doubt is not a dead end. It is an invitation. You are being invited to dismantle illusions, to let fall the masks, and to prepare the ground for something far greater than you have ever imagined. The universe is patient, but it is also relentless. It will keep stripping away what no longer serves you until you are raw, real, and ready. History tells us that all great awakenings begin this way, not in triumph, but in trembling. When Martin Luther nailed his theses to the church door, he did so against a backdrop of fear and uncertainty. When Galileo looked through his telescope and challenged the heavens, he was met with suspicion and doubt. Transformation rarely feels noble in its beginning. More often, it feels like exile. But exile from the old world is always the first step toward a new one. So if your life feels unstable right now, if you feel the weight of questions without answers, do not despair. This is not the end. This is the beginning. You are being invited into a new reality, one built not on borrowed truths, but on the deeper call of your own becoming. And so the journey begins with the courage to question. The first undeniable sign of transformation is that you begin questioning everything you once thought you knew. Your beliefs, your values, your purpose, all the things that once seemed fixed, suddenly feel uncertain. It can be frightening, as though the foundation of your identity is dissolving. But in truth, this moment is sacred. It is the universe's way of shaking you awake. It often begins subtly. You catch yourself reflecting in moments of stillness. Who am I really? What do I truly want? Why does this life I've built feel incomplete? These aren't casual thoughts. They are cracks in the old mental structures. At first, it may feel like disorientation, but what is really happening is the removal of illusions. The ground may feel unstable because the ground is shifting beneath you, pushing you toward something greater. This has always been the starting point of deep transformation. Socrates, centuries ago in Athens, taught that true wisdom began not with certainty, but with questioning. His relentless inquiry unsettled the entire city because it threatened the comfort of old answers. Likewise, Siddhartha Gautama, the man who became the Buddha, was surrounded by wealth, luxury, and tradition. But a single question began gnawing at him. Why do people suffer? That single question drove him to leave everything behind in search of truth. Questioning is not rebellion for its own sake. It is the recognition that the stories you once lived by no longer sustain your soul. It is an awakening, a tearing of the veil. And while it feels destabilizing, it is also profoundly liberating. Because once you start questioning, you cannot go back. At this stage, you may feel as though you're losing everything familiar: relationships, habits, routines. The conversations you once enjoyed might feel shallow. The career path you pursued may suddenly feel meaningless. This is not a coincidence. It is the inner self demanding alignment. You are undergoing what mystics have called the death of the false self. And the identities you clung to, titles, roles, appearances, are falling away, not because they were failures, but because they have fulfilled their purpose. Consider the metaphor of alchemy. The old self is like lead, dense, heavy, seemingly unremarkable. Questioning begins the alchemical fire. The heat feels destructive, unbearable at times. But this fire is what transforms lead into gold. Without it, no transmutation could ever occur. And here is where the danger lies. Many mistake this questioning for weakness. They interpret their doubts as a loss of direction, when in fact doubt is the first step toward clarity. History is filled with those who doubted the given truths of their time, and in doing so, illuminated the path for others. Galileo questioned the heavens. Luther questioned the church. Harriet Tubman questioned the chains of her era and dared to break them. Each of them endured ridicule, rejection, or even punishment. But their questioning was not destruction. It was the spark of transformation that reshaped entire worlds. When your life begins to feel unfamiliar, when the certainties vanish and the questions multiply, you may think you're lost, but this is when you are closest to your path. It's as though the familiar world has dimmed so that you can see the glow of something new in the distance. This glow is not external. It burns inside you. The questions may grow heavier. Am I living a life that honors my soul's calling? Or am I simply performing roles written for me by others? These are not idle thoughts. They are doorways. And once you walk through them, there is no turning back. Suddenly, the old map no longer applies. The rules you lived by don't fit anymore. And though this can feel terrifying, it is also the clearest sign that transformation has already begun. To question everything is not to reject life. It is to honor it. It is to say, I will no longer sleepwalk through existence. I want to see clearly, even if the truth is uncomfortable, and in that willingness you are reborn. So when the questions rise in you, do not silence them. Do not cover them with distractions. Welcome them. They are the universe's invitation to awaken, to dismantle the illusions of the past, and to prepare for a more authentic self to emerge. Because questioning is not the end. It is the first step of the journey, the beginning of transformation itself. Once the questions begin, life itself starts to look unfamiliar. What once made perfect sense suddenly feels hollow. The routines you relied on no longer satisfy you. The certainties that anchored you dissolve, and the world seems to lose its shape. You may feel like you're losing your footing, as though everything around you is falling apart. But the paradox is this: what feels like collapse is actually creation. Think of a forest after a wildfire. The flames rage, the old growth turns to ash, and at first it seems like death has triumphed. But look closer. Within weeks, green shoots emerge from the blackened earth. The soil, renewed by destruction, now carries the power to nourish new life. In the same way, the disorientation you feel is not an end, but a clearing, making space for your truest self to emerge. This pattern has echoed throughout human history. The Renaissance followed the Black Death, a time when nearly half of Europe's population perished. Out of devastation came a new birth of art, philosophy, and science. Japan's Meiji Restoration arose after centuries of isolation, when old systems collapsed and disorientation gave rise to rapid transformation. Again and again, chaos has proven to be the midwife of renewal. So too with your life. The crumbling of old structures is not meant to punish you, but to liberate you. The familiar is falling away because it no longer fits. The identity you once wore was a costume for a role that has ended. And now you stand in the space between acts, naked but authentic, waiting for the curtain to rise on something greater. This is why the process feels so uncomfortable. Certainty, even when it confines us, feels safe. Uncertainty, even when it opens new doors, feels terrifying. When you no longer recognize the world around you, it can feel like exile. But exile has always been a place of transformation. Moses found his calling in the desert. Dante descended into the underworld before ascending to paradise. Exile strips us of comfort, but it also strips us of illusions. What remains is only what is real. And what is real is you, the unmasked, unvarnished you. It is here, in the disorientation, that the universe begins its work. The masks you wore, dutiful employee, agreeable partner, obedient child, are peeled away. The lies you told yourself, this is enough, this is who I am, this is what I must accept, are shattered. The walls of identity collapse, leaving only raw honesty. And though it feels like chaos, it is in fact sacred order, breaking down what was never meant to last. Consider the caterpillar. To become a butterfly, it does not simply sprout wings and fly. It dissolves inside the cocoon, its old form turning into a formless soup. It must first cease to be what it was before it can become something new. To the caterpillar, this must feel like death, yet from that disorientation comes flight. The same truth applies to you. When everything familiar feels like it is vanishing, remember, you are not broken. You are breaking free. At this stage, you may notice people fading from your life. Conversations that once energized you now feel empty. Habits that once defined you now weigh you down. Even your own thoughts begin to shift. What once brought comfort now feels suffocating. This is not failure. It is detox. The soul, like the body, sheds what is toxic when it is ready to heal. And yes, letting go hurts. To release the past is to grieve it, but grief itself is proof of transformation. In ancient rites of passage, whether among the Maasai warriors of Africa or the initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, disorientation was always the gateway to rebirth. Old identities had to die for new ones to be born. You are walking that same path now. So, if your life feels strange, if the world around you no longer makes sense, know this: you are not losing your way. You are finally beginning to see it. Confusion is not a dead end. It is a compass, pointing you to a new horizon. This is not collapse. It is cleansing. It is the sacred storm that clears the path. And beyond it, something extraordinary waits. Another powerful sign that you are on the edge of transformation is this: you begin to feel a quiet but undeniable disconnection from your past. It doesn't happen overnight. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly. The hobbies that once lit you up no longer stir the same excitement. The places that once felt like home now feel distant, almost foreign. The conversations that once filled you with laughter now leave you searching for meaning. What you are experiencing is not boredom, it is evolution. Your soul has begun to loosen its grip on the old life because it knows you've outgrown it. This detachment isn't random. It isn't just a mood. It is one of the universe's clearest signals that a new chapter is being prepared for you. Think of it as the tide receding before a great wave arrives. Something vast and inevitable is on its way. This pattern has always existed. Across cultures, rites of passage have marked the threshold between who you once were and who you are becoming. Among the Maasai of Kenya, young boys undergo a period of separation before becoming warriors. In ancient Greece, initiates into the Eleusinian mysteries were withdrawn from daily life before being symbolically reborn. In each case, a form of disconnection from the old self was necessary before stepping into the new. You are walking your own version of that ancient path. At first, this disconnection feels unsettling. There is grief in realizing that the life you once built no longer feels like yours. The job that once defined you now feels like a cage. The friendships that once gave you joy now feel strained or hollow. The rituals that once gave your day structure now feel meaningless. This unraveling can feel like loss, but in truth, it is preparation. The universe is clearing the stage so that a new act can begin, and yet letting go is never easy. You may find yourself clinging to old relationships or habits, trying to revive them out of fear. After all, the familiar, even when it no longer fits, feels safer than the unknown. But the soul cannot be deceived. It knows when it has outgrown its skin, and when that moment comes, nothing can reverse it. Like a snake shedding its scales, like autumn trees releasing their leaves, you must let the old fall away. This sense of disconnection is often misunderstood. Many see it as a personal failure, as if they've become ungrateful for what they once cherished. But that's not what's happening. You are not betraying your past. You are honoring it by acknowledging that its purpose has been fulfilled. The chapters that once defined you were never meant to be permanent. They were stepping stones, not prisons. History gives us countless examples. Consider the young Augustine in the Roman Empire. Once devoted to pleasures and ambitions, he later described that life as hollow when he felt a greater calling stir within him, one that would transform him into one of Christianity's most influential thinkers. Or think of Simone Weil, the French philosopher, who abandoned intellectual salons in Paris when they no longer nourished her, choosing instead a path of spiritual pursuit. Both remind us, when the past begins to feel foreign, it is because the future is demanding space. Disconnection, then, is not a punishment. It is a sacred signal. It is your inner being whispering, "You cannot carry this weight into the next chapter. Leave it here. Something new is waiting." And yet, this detachment often comes with loneliness. The people you once felt close to may no longer understand you. The activities that once defined your weekends may now leave you restless. You may look around and feel like a stranger in your own life. But even this loneliness serves a purpose. It creates the silence in which your new identity can take root. In time, you will draw toward you new connections, new passions, new experiences that resonate with who you are becoming, not who you once were. Think of this phase as a clearing in the forest. The old growth has been cut away, and for now the space looks empty. But beneath the soil, new life is stirring. Seeds you cannot yet see are preparing to break through. And when they do, the emptiness will be revealed for what it truly is, not a loss, but a beginning. So if you feel distant from the person you once were, if the past feels like it belongs to someone else, take heart. This is not the end of your story. It is the threshold of the next chapter. The disconnection you feel is the soul's way of creating room for the person you are destined to become. Let the past fall away. What comes next is waiting for you. Another unmistakable sign that transformation is unfolding within you is the sudden shift in what you consider important. The things that once consumed your energy, status, possessions, recognition, begin to lose their grip on your heart. You find yourself questioning whether these pursuits were ever truly yours, or if they were simply borrowed dreams handed down by society. It feels strange at first. Achievements that once filled you with pride now seem shallow. Opinions that once weighed heavily on you now barely register. The goals that once seemed urgent no longer spark the same fire. Instead, a quiet voice rises within asking, "What truly matters?" This shift is not failure, it is freedom. It is the peeling away of false priorities so that your life can be reoriented toward what nourishes your soul. Human history is filled with this moment of reevaluation. Siddhartha left behind a life of luxury in search of truth. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, wrote in his meditations that wealth, fame, power, these are nothing if they corrupt the soul. Even Tolstoy, after literary success, abandoned his pursuit of social approval to embrace a life of simplicity and spiritual depth. Each of these figures illustrates the same truth. When priorities shift, the world may see loss, but the soul knows it is gain, and so it may be with you. Perhaps you notice that money no longer defines your sense of worth, or that recognition no longer feels like validation, or that the race to meet society's expectations feels less urgent than the desire to live in alignment with your authentic self. It can be unsettling. After all, entire systems, economies, schools, communities are built on keeping you tethered to external measures of success. To step away from them is to swim against the current. Friends may not understand. Family may question you. But the truth is, this shift is not about rejecting life. It is about reclaiming it. The beauty of this stage is that as old priorities fade, new ones emerge. Experiences begin to outweigh possessions. Depth begins to matter more than appearances. Purpose begins to matter more than performance. Suddenly, a quiet moment with someone you love feels more valuable than applause from strangers. A small act of kindness feels more meaningful than climbing another rung on the ladder. It is as though a filter has fallen away, revealing life in sharper focus. What once seemed vital now feels trivial, and what once felt invisible now shines with importance. You begin to see that fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation, but from connection, from experiences that enrich your soul and relationships that nourish your spirit. This reordering of values has always marked turning points in civilizations as well. During the Renaissance, artists and thinkers shifted away from blind adherence to medieval dogma and placed human creativity, dignity, and expression at the center of life. In the 1960s, a generation rejected materialism and sought meaning in freedom, peace, and consciousness. And today, as technology accelerates, more and more people feel the stirrings of this same reevaluation, asking whether constant consumption truly equals happiness. Your personal transformation mirrors these larger tides. The shift in priorities you feel is not a passing mood. It is the signal that your inner compass has recalibrated. You are no longer living for appearances. You are living for essence. This stage, however, can bring a sense of isolation. You may feel out of place among those still chasing what no longer appeals to you. Yet this loneliness is the seedbed of clarity. It clears the noise, giving space for your authentic desires to surface. And soon, as your energy shifts, you will attract others who share your vision, those who value what you now value. So when you find yourself unmoved by the things that once defined you, take it as confirmation. This is not indifference. It is awakening. You are being guided away from the shallow so that you can step into the profound. Your priorities are no longer dictated by the world. They are being shaped by your soul. And that is the truest sign that transformation has already taken root. As transformation deepens, something remarkable begins to awaken within you, your intuition. You start to notice a clarity that was never there before. The noise of constant thought quiets and a deeper voice rises, one that doesn't speak in words but in feelings, nudges, and knowing. Decisions that once felt impossible suddenly become simple. Choices that once required endless deliberation now feel obvious. This is the fourth sign. You begin to feel more connected to your intuition than ever before. Intuition is not new, it has always been with you. But in the past it was buried beneath the chatter of expectations, logic, and fear. Now, as your old structures fall away, the voice of intuition has space to emerge. It might show up as a gut feeling steering you away from someone, a strange pull toward a new path, or an inner calm that reassures you even when circumstances seem uncertain. The ancients recognized this inner wisdom long before modern psychology gave it a name. The Greeks consulted the oracle at Delphi, trusting that divine insight could pierce through confusion. In many indigenous traditions, shamans relied on visions and dreams, listening to the guidance of the unseen. In China, the Taoist sages spoke of Wu Wei, effortless action, the art of aligning oneself with the natural flow of the universe rather than forcing outcomes. Across time and cultures, intuition has been revered as a sacred compass. And yet, in modern life, we've been taught to mistrust it. We are told to value reason above all else, to measure, analyze, and justify every decision. But reason alone is not enough. Some of history's greatest breakthroughs came not from calculation, but from sudden intuitive leaps. Einstein spoke of his theories arriving as images in the mind, long before he could prove them mathematically. Nikola Tesla claimed his inventions appeared to him in visions, fully formed. Intuition is not the enemy of logic. It is the spark that guides logic toward discovery. As you begin to honor this inner voice, you notice life itself starts to feel different. Patterns emerge where you once saw chaos. Seemingly random encounters carry meaning. Synchronicities, the right book appearing at the right time, the right person crossing your path at the perfect moment, become too precise to dismiss as coincidence. It is as if the universe is conspiring with you, aligning events around your growth. At first, trusting this process feels risky. Intuition rarely provides a full map. It gives you only the next step, asking you to walk in faith rather than certainty. But here lies the gift. When you act from intuition, you act in harmony with your deepest self. Fear begins to lose its grip because your choices are no longer based on avoidance of pain, but alignment with truth. Intuition can be subtle, a whisper rather than a shout. It may speak through the body, a tightening in the chest when something feels wrong, or a lightness in your step when something feels right. It may arrive as a sudden thought that interrupts your day, or a quiet sense of peace that settles over you in moments of decision. The more you listen, the clearer it becomes. The more you trust it, the stronger it grows. This awakening of intuition marks a turning point in your transformation. It means you are no longer relying solely on external guidance, on authority, tradition, or social approval. You are beginning to navigate from within, and that is the essence of freedom. History reminds us that those who trusted their intuition often changed the world. Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl, followed an inner voice that led her to command armies and alter the fate of France. Gandhi trusted an inner conviction of nonviolence, even when the world called it naive, and reshaped an empire through moral strength. Their stories show us what becomes possible when one dares to listen inwardly, even against all odds. So if you find yourself drawn to trust your inner compass, even when it defies logic, honor it. That is not madness. That is awakening. You are learning to walk not by sight alone, but by a deeper vision. And in doing so, you are aligning with the natural rhythm of your own becoming. The next sign is unmistakable. A growing hunger for growth begins to stir within you. It is no longer enough simply to exist, to repeat the same routines, to survive from one day to the next. Something inside of you longs to expand, to discover, to evolve into more than you have ever been. You feel it as a restless pull, a desire for knowledge, for experience, for truth. Suddenly, books that once seemed dense now feel alive. Conversations that challenge your thinking become magnetic. You may find yourself drawn to new skills, new philosophies, even new environments. What once satisfied you now feels too small. This isn't discontent, it's evolution. Psychologists call this urge self-actualization. Maslow described it as the pinnacle of human need, the drive to become the fullest, most authentic version of ourselves. But long before psychology gave it a name, humanity understood this hunger. The Renaissance celebrated the Homo universalis, the universal human who sought to master many disciplines. Art, science, philosophy, not for status, but for the sheer joy of growth. Stoic philosophers urged the pursuit of virtue, the only true form of expansion. Buddhist monks pursued enlightenment through discipline and meditation, shedding illusions to uncover deeper wisdom. Across cultures, across eras, growth has always been the mark of a soul in transformation. And yet, this hunger for growth is not only intellectual, it is emotional and spiritual as well. You may notice yourself confronting old wounds, patterns, and fears you once avoided. You begin to sense that healing is a form of growth too, that releasing the weight of the past is as important as acquiring new knowledge. Like pruning a tree so it may grow taller, the soul prunes away beliefs and habits that no longer serve. This stage can be both exhilarating and exhausting. Some days you feel unstoppable, driven by new energy and vision. Other days you may feel overwhelmed by the vastness of what you do not yet know. But even in the uncertainty, there is momentum. Every step forward, no matter how small, feeds the flame of your transformation. Throughout history, those who heeded this hunger reshaped not only themselves, but the world around them. Leonardo da Vinci sketched anatomy, painted masterpieces, and designed machines because his curiosity refused to stay confined. Frederick Douglass, once enslaved, taught himself to read and write, an act of growth so radical it became a weapon of liberation. Marie Curie risked her health in pursuit of scientific discovery, guided not by fame, but by an insatiable drive to understand. Each of them carried the same spark you now feel, a refusal to remain unchanged. And here is the most important truth. Growth is not a luxury. It is a necessity. The soul withers when it is stagnant. But when it is fed, it expands beyond what logic could predict. This hunger often brings shifts in your relationships too. You begin to seek out those who challenge and inspire you and distance yourself from those who keep you small. Growth is contagious. The more you expand, the more you attract others on the same path. Conversations deepen, connections strengthen, and life itself begins to feel like a classroom where every moment carries a lesson. It is easy, however, to mistake growth for perfectionism. This is not about endlessly chasing achievements. True growth is not about becoming flawless. It is about becoming real. It is about aligning more closely with your essence, even when that means confronting shadows and weaknesses. The process is not about adding more layers, but peeling them back until what remains is your truest self. So when you feel this hunger rising in you, this urge to learn, to heal, to evolve, do not ignore it. It is one of the clearest signs that transformation is unfolding. You are no longer content with the surface. You are being pulled into depth, and in that depth, you will discover that growth is not the goal of transformation. It is the very heartbeat of it. As transformation deepens, you begin to notice something else, an almost unbearable heaviness in the places, people, and patterns that no longer resonate with who you are becoming. Behaviors you once tolerated now feel corrosive. Environments you once accepted as normal now feel suffocating. Relationships you once clung to now drain you. This is the sixth sign. You feel an intense desire to break free from what is toxic. It is not simply about rejection. It is about survival. The soul cannot thrive while shackled to what diminishes it. And so, almost instinctively, you begin to release. This stage is difficult because it touches the heart. Some of these connections may have been with you for years. Friends who once felt like family, habits that once gave comfort, environments that once felt safe. Letting them go can feel like betrayal. But it is not betrayal. It is honesty. It is acknowledging that not everything is meant to last forever, and that clinging to the old can suffocate the new. Cultures across the world have long understood the necessity of release. In Japan, the practice of misogi emphasizes purification, shedding what is impure to prepare for renewal. Among the Navajo, ceremonies exist to cleanse the spirit of harmful influences, restoring balance. In Christian tradition, the act of confession and repentance is less about guilt than about unburdening the soul. Each tradition carries the same truth. Before rebirth, there must be purification. And so it is with you. You are purifying your life, not in ritual alone, but in action. You are stepping away from relationships that wound you. You are walking out of spaces that stifle you. You are setting down patterns that have chained you for too long. This process is not without pain. To cut ties, to walk away, to say goodbye. These are among the hardest acts of transformation. But they are also among the most liberating, because every ending clears space for a beginning. Every release creates room for alignment. History shows us that even the most extraordinary figures faced this trial. Think of the Hebrew patriarch Abraham, called to leave his homeland, his community, even his father's house to pursue a destiny that lay beyond the horizon. Or consider the artist Vincent van Gogh, who broke away from family expectations and social conventions, isolating himself to remain true to his vision. In each case, liberation required departure. And yet, breaking free does not mean abandoning others with bitterness. It is not about condemning those who cannot follow you. It is about honoring yourself with love. The clarity you feel now is not cruelty, it is truth. To continue shrinking yourself to fit into toxic spaces would be the real betrayal. What happens when you take this step is extraordinary. The weight begins to lift. The air feels lighter. New people begin to appear, those who resonate with your growth, who reflect your evolution, who remind you that relationships are not meant to drain, but to nourish. What once felt like loss transforms into freedom. This stage of transformation is one of self-liberation. It is your declaration to the universe, I will no longer remain where my soul cannot breathe. And the universe responds. It fills the empty spaces with connections that uplift, with opportunities that align, with experiences that expand. Yes, there will be grief. Yes, there will be moments of doubt. But beneath it all, there is peace. The peace of knowing you are finally honoring who you are becoming. To break free is not the end. It is the threshold. And on the other side of that threshold, a new life waits. The final sign is perhaps the most profound. You begin to feel a deep, almost irreversible disconnection from everything that no longer serves you. It is as if the weight of the old world, its roles, its routines, its illusions, has finally slipped from your shoulders. What once defined you no longer fits. What once seemed essential now feels like an echo. At first, this disconnection can feel unsettling. People you once loved feel distant. Habits that once shaped your days feel empty. Even places that once felt safe seem foreign, like houses you've outgrown. But beneath the sadness lies something greater: freedom. It is the sense of finally being unbound, of breathing air that is lighter, clearer, more honest than before. This is not the end. It is the rebirth. Throughout history, rebirth has been humanity's most enduring story. In Egypt, the god Osiris was torn apart, only to rise again as a symbol of life beyond death. In Christianity, resurrection is the central miracle, the triumph of new life over the grave. The phoenix, consumed by flames, emerges from ashes brighter than before. These myths endure because they point to a truth written into the human soul. Before something new can live, something old must die. And so it is with you. The disconnection you feel is not abandonment. It is preparation. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding skins. And what emerges is not smaller, but greater, an identity more aligned, more authentic, more luminous than the one you've left behind. This phase carries its own challenges. There are moments of grief for the life you can no longer return to. Nostalgia whispers, "Wasn't it easier before?" But deep down, you know you cannot go back. To return to the old self would be to shrink into a form that no longer holds you. It would be like trying to crawl back into a cocoon after you have already grown wings. Instead, you move forward. You notice that as you let go of what drains you, life begins to fill you with what sustains you. New relationships arrive, genuine, nourishing, aligned with your growth. New opportunities open, doors you never saw before, now visible because you have raised your vision. New energy flows, creativity, purpose, clarity. The silence that once felt like emptiness now hums with potential. This is the promise of rebirth, the realization that transformation was never about destruction. It was about revelation. It was about stripping away what was false so that the truth could finally stand unveiled. And the most extraordinary part? The journey does not end here. Transformation is not a single event. It is a rhythm, a spiral, a cycle that repeats across a lifetime. Again and again you will be called to release, to question, to grow, to awaken. Each time you will emerge stronger, clearer, more whole. If you are hearing these words now and they resonate, even in the smallest way, trust that it is not by accident. You are being called. You are standing at the threshold of your own rebirth. And what lies ahead is not simply a new life. It is a truer one. So stay curious, stay open, let go of what no longer serves you, and step forward into what has been waiting all along, a life aligned not with fear, not with expectation, but with your deepest truth. This is not just change. This is transformation. This is not just survival. This is awakening, and it begins now.